Something about Ruth Langsford's quiet strength has always drawn us in, hasn't it? But that recent moment she shared, it hit differently. You could almost hear the collective breath catch across living rooms up and down the country. Ruth has spent years in our mornings and afternoons on screen, that warm smile, the effortless professionalism alongside Eamonn Holmes. They weren't just colleagues or a presenting duo. They felt like a constant in British television, a partnership that weathered the early shifts, the laughs, the tough days, and the very public life of sharing a sofa on This Morning for so long. So when the news of their split first broke back in 2024, it landed with a quiet shock for so many viewers. It wasn't just the end of a marriage, it felt like a chapter closing on something familiar and reassuring. But it was Ruth's latest, deeply personal reflections that really stopped people in their tracks. In a candid interview, she opened up about feeling utterly blindsided by how it all unfolded. She described believing she had a very happy marriage, questioning herself in those raw early days, wondering if she'd missed signs, if she'd been too busy, too caught up in the rhythm of life and work. "I just didn't think I'd find myself here," she said. And you could feel the weight in those words. Many viewers watching her interviews or catching the coverage noticed how she carried herself with such grace, yet beneath it, there was this profound sense of loss. Broken heart, broken dreams. Her own description painted a picture that resonated far beyond celebrity gossip. It reminded us all how suddenly life can pivot, even for someone who spent decades building something that looked unbreakable on camera. What struck so many was the story of the wedding ring. A year after the split was announced, Ruth was still wearing it. Friends gently nudged her, and one evening, surrounded by that close circle of support, she finally slipped it off. "I was crying my eyes out because it's a big thing, isn't it?" she shared. "It's one of those moments of acceptance. Wow. That's it. I'm not married anymore. I'm getting divorced." Imagine that scene. Not on television, but in the quiet of real life. The symbolic weight of a ring that represented nearly 3 decades together, the tears that came not from anger in that instant, but from the finality of letting go. Many people watching her story unfold online or in the papers felt that tug. It wasn't dramatic for the cameras, it was human. The kind of private milestone that television personalities rarely share so openly. It almost seemed as though that small act marked the beginning of Ruth allowing herself to process what had happened, rather than simply powering through for the sake of her work and her son Jack. Viewers online interpreted it as a quiet act of courage, the sort that doesn't come with applause but lingers in the mind. And then there was the therapy. Ruth spoke about those first sessions where the tears flowed so freely her counselor barely saw her face for the initial meetings. The professional gently but firmly stating the reality: the marriage was over. It was grief, it was trauma, it was shock. Many audiences began wondering whether her willingness to talk about this now, seeking help, accepting the darkness before finding light, might be part of why her return to screens like Loose Women and appearances elsewhere felt different. There was a new layer of authenticity, perhaps. Not the polished presenter we knew, but someone navigating the same messy emotions so many of us face when long chapters end. It's fascinating, isn't it, how television shapes our perceptions of these figures? 4 years, Ruth and Eamonn were the golden couple of ITV daytime, bantering, supporting each other through health challenges, raising their son while juggling demanding careers. Their chemistry on screen made mornings feel warmer. So when that image cracked, it wasn't just their story that shifted, it prompted a lot of us to reflect on our own assumptions about public relationships. Some people watching felt a pang of sadness for the family unit that had seemed so steady. Others admired Ruth's resilience in stepping back initially, then returning without turning her platform into a battleground. While nothing has been confirmed about every detail behind the split, what Ruth has shared paints a picture of someone who expected forever and had to rebuild when that vision dissolved. Think about the body language we've seen in her more recent appearances. That composed posture, the thoughtful pauses when the conversation edges near personal territory. It almost seemed as though the studio atmosphere softened around her at times, colleagues and audiences giving space for the woman behind the presenter. There's a psychology here that's deeply relatable. When someone who's been a fixture in our homes speaks about questioning their own awareness or feeling broken at the start, it humanizes the entire narrative. It moves beyond headlines into something more universal. The quiet mornings of crying in the shower, the friends who rally, the decision to create your own happiness rather than wait for it to return. Ruth has talked about that period of darkness and how she began to see a future again, through work, family, therapy, and small daily steps. What makes moments like this stick with viewers long after the segment ends is the emotional truth underneath. It's not just Ruth's story. It's a mirror for anyone who's ever had to rewrite their future. The public perception shifted too, from shock at the split to respect for how she's handled the aftermath with dignity, especially while much of it played out in the spotlight. Social media conversations reflected that mix: sympathy for the blindsided feeling she described, admiration for her honesty about therapy being one of the best decisions she's made, and discussions about how television personalities process very private pain under constant eyes. Some audiences felt it highlighted the pressure of maintaining a brave face when your world has changed so dramatically. Ruth's journey seems to speak to broader themes in our culture right now, the idea that strength isn't about never falling apart, but about how you gather the pieces. She's spoken of accepting that not everything lasts forever, of focusing on her son, her career, and finding her own light. That cinematic quality to her story, the long partnership that defined so much of her public life giving way to a new chapter, resonates because it's raw and real. Viewers noticed how she carried herself afterward, not diminished, but evolving. There's a possibility that sharing these insights helps normalize seeking help, normalize the tears that come with big decisions, and remind us that even the most familiar faces on our screens are navigating life just like the rest of us. In the end, what stayed with so many wasn't only the pain she described, but the quiet determination shining through. The way she acknowledged the happy years without erasing them, the refusal to play the blame game, and the forward gaze toward whatever comes next. It almost felt like a masterclass in emotional honesty delivered with the grace we've come to expect from her. Moments like these on our television landscape don't just entertain, they connect us through shared humanity. They make us pause and consider our own relationships, our own moments of acceptance, and the resilience required to keep showing up. Perhaps that's why Ruth Langsford's reflections continue to spark conversation. Not because of scandal or drama, but because in her vulnerability, she reminded viewers of something profoundly simple and powerful. Life moves on, even when it hurts, and there's strength in naming the grief before stepping into the next page. What did you notice in her words? Did that ring moment hit you the same way? Or maybe her openness about therapy made you think differently about your own tough times? Drop your thoughts below. We'd love to hear how her story landed with you. Because in sharing these experiences, even from afar, we realize we're never truly watching alone.